At 6:47 p.m., a man walking his dog along the eastern edge of Wicklow Wood dialed emergency services with shaking hands. He didn't say he'd seen a fight. He said he'd heard one voice sharp enough to cut through winter-thin branches, one pleading, one angry, both frightened. Then a pause. Then a single scream that stopped as abruptly as it started, like someone had put a hand over a mouth. By the time responders reached the trailhead, there was no blood, no broken phone, no scattered clothing, no obvious signs of violence. Just two teenagers emerging from the tree line too slowly, as if they weren't sure the world outside the woods still worked the way it should. The boys' hands were dirty to the wrists. The girl kept rubbing her forearm in the same spot again and again, like she could still feel something tightening there. Their names were Mira A. and Rowan L. They were known in town as those two, the pair you always saw together at the corner shop, at the bus stop, at the library when they were supposed to be studying. Friends since childhood. Different in every visible way and close in the way people only get when they've watched each other grow up. Mira was the one teachers trusted. Organized, careful, the sort of student who made study schedules and actually followed them. Rowan was the one adults watched. Charming, quick to smile, quick to argue, hungry for a bigger life than the one their town offered him. They told police they'd gone for a walk to clear their heads. It sounded harmless. It should have been harmless. The trouble started at the creek. There used to be a small bridge there, 2 planks, a rail, nothing fancy. That afternoon it was collapsed, half sunk and useless. Mira wanted to turn around. Rowan didn't. He said he could see stepping stones. He said it would be fine. He called it an adventure, and something in the word, something bright, something reckless, pulled Mira along despite every sensible alarm going off in her mind. They crossed, arms out for balance. Rowan slipped once and grabbed at Myra's sleeve, yanking them both off center. Mira planted her foot hard, saving them from going into the cold water. Later, Rowan would say that moment mattered more than it seemed. That he'd felt embarrassed, then grateful, then small, like he was always the one being steadied. On the other side, the path didn't feel like a path anymore. The woods got thicker. The air cooled. Sounds dulled. It wasn't the kind of quiet you find on a peaceful hike. It was the quiet you get when the world is listening. Rowan was the one who saw the tin container first, half buried under a root like the earth had tried to swallow it. It was small and rusted, tied once with twine that crumbled when he touched it. He pried open the lid and both of them leaned in, expecting the leftovers of someone's lunch, maybe a kid's forgotten trinkets. Instead there was a folded paper. The paper looked old, not just stained but tired, as if it had been waiting a very long time to be read. Mira unfolded it carefully, the way you handle something you don't want to destroy. It was a hand-drawn map, a creek marked in a wavering line, a cluster of stones like jagged teeth, a symbol that looked like an eye. There was writing too in faded ink. To those who find this, be brave. The woods keep their own. The greedy get caught. Rowan laughed it off at first. Mira didn't. She said it was probably some old scavenger hunt, someone messing around decades ago. But her voice didn't have its usual certainty. The paper felt too deliberate. The warning felt too specific. And the map, when they compared it to the landmarks around them, matched. Rowan wanted to follow it immediately. Mira tried to bargain. 1 hour, then back. Rowan agreed too quickly, already turning his body toward the deeper trees. He carried the map like it was fragile and precious. They found the teeth, stones exactly where the drawing said they'd be. That's when Myra's stomach dropped, because coincidence stopped being a reasonable explanation. Then they saw the oak with the eye carved into it. The carving was old enough that the bark had started growing over the lines, like a scar half-healed. Mira remembers the moment her skin prickled. Rowan remembers grinning and feeling for the first time in weeks, like something good was finally happening to him. The map pointed from the eye to a hollow marked with a star. They found it beneath a fallen tree, where the roots rose out of the soil like ribs. In the shadowed gap between them was a crawl space, dark, damp, just wide enough to squeeze through. Mira hesitated. Rowan tried to make a joke. Neither one laughed. They went in. The passage narrowed and then opened into a chamber, a pocket under the forest floor. It wasn't large, but it felt contained, like the earth had wrapped itself around a secret and refused to let it breathe. The air smelled of wet stone and mushrooms. There was a faint glimmer ahead, not quite light, more like something reflective catching the little daylight that filtered through cracks. In the center of the chamber sat a wooden box bound in tarnished metal. The surface was carved in twisting patterns that, depending on how you looked at them, resembled vines or webs. Rowan's voice went small. "It's real." Mira didn't answer. She was staring at the carvings, at the way they seemed to tighten toward the latch. They opened it together. Inside, coins the color of old gold stamped with unfamiliar symbols. Heavy bracelets. A cup that looked ceremonial. And beneath the cloth, a green stone, polished smooth, deep as bottle glass and strangely bright in the dim. Rowan picked up the stone, and the room seemed to change around them. Mira said she felt pressure like the air thickened. Rowan said he felt warmth in his palm, like the stone recognized him. His breathing got fast. He couldn't stop looking at it. His eyes shone the way they did when he talked about leaving town, about escaping, about finally getting ahead instead of always being one bad week away from disaster. Mira told him to put it back. Rowan snapped at her without meaning to, then did mean to. He said she always did this, always tried to make choices for both of them, always acted like wanting something was selfish. Mira said it wasn't about being selfish, it was about what was right. Rowan said what's right was a luxury for people who already had enough. That's when the argument became something else, less about a stone, more about everything they'd never said out loud. Mira had never heard Rowan sound that desperate. Rowan had never heard Mira sound that scared. The woods didn't need a weapon. It didn't need a knife or a stranger in a mask. It only needed that moment. Two friends standing over a fortune and one of them deciding it belonged to him. Mira noticed it first. A strand, thin as hair, drifting down from the ceiling. It caught the faint light and shimmered. Then another. And another. They weren't dropping like spider silk blown by a breeze. They were lowering with intention, slow and patient like something taking careful aim. Rowan didn't see them until one brushed his shoulder. He flinched. He tried to swipe it away. The strand didn't break. It clung, too strong, too quick. It wrapped once, twice like it knew the shape of him. Rowan jerked back and the movement only made more of them appear, multiplying in a heartbeat. Fine threads touched his arms, his chest, his hair. They tightened, not violently but firmly, as if the air itself was becoming restrained. Rowan's face drained. He tried to step back and couldn't. "Mira," he said, and the anger was gone now. Only panic remained. "I can't, help me." Mira grabbed his wrist and pulled. A thread snapped around her forearm, cold and slick and locked in place. The instinct to fight surged through her, but she felt the trap respond. The harder she yanked, the tighter it got, like those threads fed on struggle. Rowan's breathing turned ragged. His eyes flicked frantically from the webbing to the box to Mira. "This isn't real," he said, like saying it could make it true. "This can't be real." Mira stared at the warning she'd dismissed too easily. The greedy get caught. The words weren't poetic. They were instructions. A diagnosis. Rowan's hand was still clenched around the stone. Mira realized then what the woods were doing. It wasn't punishing him for stepping off the path. It was punishing him for what was happening inside him. For the moment the treasure stopped being a discovery and became a claim. She forced her voice to soften, to lower, like talking someone down from a ledge. "Rowan," she said, "listen to me. Don't fight it." He looked at her with tears in his eyes, humiliated by fear and furious at it too. "I need it," he rasped. "You don't understand. I'm tired, Mira. I'm tired of being behind. I'm tired of watching everyone else get chances I don't get." Myra's chest tightened because she did understand, maybe not the same way but enough. Enough to know this wasn't just greed. It was desperation wearing greed's face. "I'm here," she said, closer now, ignoring the cold thread biting her arm. "I'm not judging you. But this thing, this place, wants you to choose it over me. Over us." Rowan swallowed hard. His gaze flicked to the stone like it was a life raft. Mira put her hand over his fist. Not prying. Not forcing. Just holding. Human pressure, familiar pressure, anchoring him to something that wasn't gold or escape. "You can want a better life," she whispered. "But not like this. Not if it costs you." Rowan's body shook. For a moment, the webbing trembled as if it could feel the shift in him. "Let it go," Mira said. "Please." Rowan's fingers twitched. The stone gleamed between them. Mira felt, to her horror, the pull of it on herself. The thought that maybe she should take it, keep it safe, decide later. The temptation slid in quietly, like a thread touching skin. She understood then, the trap wasn't just for greedy people. It was for anyone who believed they could hold the treasure and remain unchanged. Rowan opened his hand. The stone dropped into Myra's palm, shockingly cold. For one breath, she wanted to close her fist. She wanted to be the one in control, the one making the call, the one who could keep a miracle from slipping away. The thread around her forearm tightened in response like a warning, "Don't lie to yourself." Mira opened her hand again. She placed the stone back into the box. The chamber exhaled. The webbing didn't snap or tear. It dissolved, thinning into nothing as if it had never existed. The pressure lifted. Rowan collapsed to his knees, gasping. Mira fell beside him, clutching her arm where the thread had been. There were no bruises, no cuts, just the raw certainty that something had held her, and then decided to let go. Rowan stared at the treasure like it was a predator that had smiled at him. "I'm sorry," he whispered, voice cracking. "I'm sorry. I didn't." "I know," Mira said, and she meant it. She wasn't angry anymore. She was shaken. She was grieving the version of that hour where the Woods hadn't tested them, where a map was just a map and a box was just a box. They didn't take anything. Not a coin, not a bracelet, not even a photograph. Mira said later she couldn't explain why, only that the idea of putting the treasure in her pocket felt like stepping into the web again. Before Mira closed the lid, she reached into her pocket and pulled out a small compass charm from a bracelet she'd bought years earlier at a street fair. Matching with Rowan, a joke about how they'd always find their way. It was cheap and worn and meant nothing to anyone else. Rowan, still kneeling, pulled his matching charm from under his shirt. Mira didn't ask. Rowan didn't speak. They placed the charms in the box together. A tiny offering. Proof, maybe, that they'd chosen something human over something glittering. Then Mira shut the lid. They crawled back through the passage and into the light. Outside, the woods looked ordinary again. Trees, leaves, a creek whispering over stones. But nothing felt ordinary inside them. Rowan kept touching his shoulders, his arms, like he expected to find silk. Mira kept rubbing her forearm, trying to convince herself her skin was just skin. They made it back to the creek. They crossed the stones in silence. Rowan reached for Myra's hand without pretending it was a joke, and Mira took it without pretending she didn't need it. They emerged near the trailhead as the sun slipped low, exactly when a dog walker heard their voices, heard the last jagged edge of panic echo through the trees, and called it in. Police questioned them separately. Their stories matched on the facts. Map, hollow, box, argument, leaving empty-handed. The only part that didn't fit official reports was the webbing. No investigators could find a chamber the next day. They found the fallen tree, yes. They found disturbed soil. They found faint residue on bark that degraded too quickly to identify. But they never found the box. And they never recovered the green stone. Mira left town the following year. Rowan stayed. People who know them say they're still friends, but not the same way. Some things, once you've seen them, change the shape of your trust. Not because someone lied, but because you learned how close you can come to losing each other without anyone else ever knowing. If you ask Mira what happened, she doesn't call it magic. She doesn't call it a monster. She calls it a warning. If you ask Rowan, he doesn't talk about gold. He talks about how it felt to want something so badly it turned into a hand around his throat. And if you ask the Woods, if you walk far enough off the path, if you cross the creek where the bridge is broken, if you listen in the hush beyond the marked trail, you might hear nothing at all. Or you might hear the softest sound of all. A thread lowering, patient and silent, waiting for the exact moment you decide that treasure matters more than the person standing beside you.